Welcome to the Power Hour, Optometry's biggest and longest running show. I'm your host, Eugene Schatzman, and today we are kicking off a deeper series on something that Jamie Rosen and I have been working on for a long time, the Eyecare BOSS system. Now, if you've heard Jamie on the show before, you know that he brings a pretty rare perspective to eye care. He helped grow his family's practice from 4 locations to over 50. He's helped hundreds of other practices, and he's seen firsthand what it takes to go from being a successful practice to becoming a scalable and optimized business. And that's really the idea behind Eyecare BOSS. It's the business optimization and scalability system that we developed around 5 major systems that every practice needs: accountability, revenue, people, experience, and data. So today we're doing a deep dive on people because that's where so many practice owners get stuck. You can have great growth ideas, great technology, great marketing, great intentions, but if you don't have the right people in the right seats, operating with the right mindsets, it becomes very hard to execute anything consistently. So in this episode, Jamie and I talk through what it takes to actually build a stronger team, how to define the rules of engagement in your practice, how to evaluate whether people belong on your team, how to think about leadership development, and how to get people aligned behind the concept of change. And before we get into it, quick reminder, make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your shows so that you know that every single time a new episode drops. And as always, I'd love to hear from you. If you have any feedback, questions, ideas for future episodes, or feedback on this Eyecare BOSS system, really, genuinely, please reach out to me at eugeneschatzman.com or through the Power Hour website. Look forward to hearing from you. And now let's go to the show. Jamie Rosen, welcome back to the Power Hour.
Eugene Schatzman, it's good to be here. How are you?
All right. So this is going to be a fun episode and the first of 5 in our, what we'll call the Eyecare BOSS monthly series. And for everybody listening, we've already introduced the Eyecare BOSS system kind of in generalities. And we introduced it first on the Power Hour, I believe back in February. And then we introduced it in live in Orlando at Vision Expo. And at this point, the book is out. The book is written, and it is literally with the publisher ready to print right now. So you could get an early copy of the book if you want to get a deep dive into some of these concepts that we're talking about. If you can't, at the time that you're listening to this episode, if you can't exactly buy it on Amazon just yet, you can just reach out to us. We'll make sure to send you a copy. One of the two of us or on the Power Hour website. It is totally fine. We're happy to take those requests, but we need to zoom in as we promised the audience, and people asked us to do this multiple times. So we're going to zoom in on each of the 5 systems that makes up Eyecare BOSS. But before we do that, let's maybe zoom out for a moment if people don't exactly remember the episode from February. And I know, like, I can't even remember what happened last week. So, maybe it's maybe it's not exactly a fair ask for our audience to remember exactly what Eyecare BOSS is. So why don't we zoom in or zoom out for a second, Jamie, and explain how Eyecare BOSS, the business optimization scalability system, came to be. And then we will zoom in on the people side of that system.
So, yeah, taking us back to a couple of years now, we had a cohort that was going in what we called the accelerator program. And in that program, we taught a lot of growth levers. I mean, we identified over 100 growth levers, and we were trying to take about 12 of them and put them into action with a cohort of about 50 practices at the time. And this was the course curriculum was sort of, you meet for 3 hours once a month, and then you try to activate what you learned in those 3 hours in the next month. And then we come back together and we'd ask people, how did it go? What did you try and how did it work? And about halfway through that program, we just did a perception check with the cohort. Hey, if there's anything we haven't covered so far, and again, keep in mind, we were trying to accelerate growth. That was the name of the program, the accelerator program. And it was mostly focused on growth. And to a person in the cohort, they came back with, I love the material that I'm learning from you guys. I just don't know how to insert this into my practice because I'm having a real hard time managing my people. So teach me how better to manage our people. And that resonated with Eugene and I. And we were like, God, we missed it. Like, yeah, these growth levers are fantastic, but if you don't have a system to execute, implement, hold people accountable, monitor and measure progress towards the goal, those are all the things that we weren't really covering. We had one session on change management, but it's much more than that, that the cohort was asking for. So we decided we need to actually take an approach to writing a book that took all the learnings that we both had in our separate businesses, that all are directly applicable to the eye care universe, and have a book specifically focused on, um, how do I manage my people in an eye care practice. So we all have read books. There's Good to Great. There's Execution by Ram Shriram and Larry Bossidy. There's Jim Collins has a lot of good stuff out there. EOS has a lot of good stuff over there. It's not exactly directly applicable to the eye care system, to our business essentially. And so we set out to take all these really good things that we had learned over the years, some from books, some from our own experiences, and put them into a step by step, if you will, book called the Business Optimization Scalability System. And that's how we came up with the book, because we figured the missing ingredient was actually how do we manage the people side of the equation.
Yeah, and I think that's almost always that's the biggest issue when I go on stage and I get people to kind of do the interactive, what's the biggest problem in your practice? And almost always people is the number one issue in a practice. And the concept of the business optimization scalability system is that optimization and scalability are kind of the operative words. And I think about, super successful practices, including Jamie's, that have really scaled. What it requires is a systematic approach to just about everything in your practice. And I think, as Jamie and I watched some of the most successful practices grow, and we watched a lot of really successful practices make a ton of mistakes on their way to growth, we thought there's got to be a shortcut to optimization and scalability. And again, that those keywords basically mean if you have a practice that's both self optimizing and self scaling, what that means is that is a practice that can run itself without one key person being the bottleneck. And it's also a practice that can continue to improve itself, get better every single day, again, without you or some key person being the bottleneck to that growth. And
Yeah, well, and
good,
I would
Jamie.
say, Eugene, the things that get in the way. So the narrative that we hear is a combination of these types of thoughts. Like, how do I get my people to do things more consistently? How do I get them to take care of things just like I would do? How do I reduce the drama and create a positive culture versus something suboptimal? All these things. How do I keep my best employees from burning out? How do I actually continue to have full staff, even though I know I'm going to have turnover coming up, whether that's intended or unintended? And then how do I shift it to be more intended turnover versus unintended turnover?
Yeah. And I think what happens is, and this is why I think we wanted to cover the people side of the
Right,
equation
for sure.
first,
Lead
is
way into
we've
the
got
people.
5 systems and they all really work together, right? When we talk about the 100 plus growth levers, that's the revenue system. But you can't activate the revenue system until other things are present in the business. What are those other things? Well, there's a model of accountability, which doesn't really sound fun. We'll cover it in a different show. It actually is really fun once it's working. And it's like, honestly, it unlocked so much for me in my business when we went from like 50 employees to more than 50. It was like, just like the thing that kept me from having to work 14-hour days. Um, and then there's this concept of, hey, patient experience. You really have to have a systematic approach to patient experience in order to compete in the marketplace as it stands now, because a systematic approach to high end patient experience really gives an independent practice a lot of edge in the marketplace today. You also have to have a data system to measure all of this stuff. Again, we'll cover this in a future show. and I mentioned the revenue system. And of course, now this is where in today's show, we'll cover the details of the people system. And really, I think the easiest way to think about it is that the people system, as we thought about it, is comprised of five core components. And those components are, in no particular order: change management, zone of genius, the core mindsets, which are the rules of engagement in your practice, leadership development, and the team fit calculator, which basically helps you understand where you set the where you set the minimum performance standards in your practice. And a lot of these things, Jamie, right, you did in your own practice, but we also watched a lot of other people do, who are very successful. And again, we learned from some of the business greats as we implemented this.
And those things that Eugene covered in the people system, the core mindset, first change management. We talk about core mindsets, super important. Leadership development, team fit calculator, zone of genius. These are all, like, I would say, the pillars within the people system. So if you get those things right, those five things right, or you start to get them better and better, closer and closer to right, you start seeing that your practice is more able to take on initiatives, because there's obviously accountability, totally different system, but you're laying the groundwork for what kind of people do I want in my practice that can help me grow this practice. It's super important, and like Eugene and I in our first accelerator cohort, completely overlooked.
Yeah. And I think if you're really thinking about this in the context of how does this apply to my practice, let's just put it into something super practical. Everybody says, I want great people on my team. But how do you really know if your people are good? And the reality is that this mindset, the concept of a core mindset, which is very different than skills. There's a difference between people having skills and being capable to people having the right mindset in your practice, which I think is more like the rule of engagement. So why don't we talk about how to find out what your core mindsets are? But before we do that, maybe I'll set it up a little bit and just kind of cover the basics of what a core mindset really is. And I just give you an example. A high performer, someone with great core mindset, walks into every patient interaction with genuine ownership. They look at every single visit as an opportunity to help patients basically get the best vision possible, not just get through their day or get through an exam or something like that. They use discovery questions to uncover lifestyle needs. They work with the optical team. They work with the doctors. They lean into all the new solutions that you have for your patients and kind of the new initiatives that you have inside your practice.
Yeah,
And then
and the other thing I would chime in is just they are the type of people that understand that the patient that's sitting in front of you probably has not been to your practice in well over 365 days. This is not something you do every day. And those people that represent the core mindsets start from the beginning, with the idea that the patient is here, if we're lucky, once every 365 days. Um, and sometimes it could be 2 years or 3 years. And what becomes really, really apparent to your staff, because they're doing it every single moment of every single day that they work, is they usually don't start at the beginning. So, for example, just think of when a patient walks in and your person that greets them is on the phone, and are they met with that person politely putting the person on hold to do a warm welcome? Or is the person hand them a clipboard with paperwork on it and signals to them while they're on the phone, fill this out? It's the, or I remember in my practice, we had dispensing booths, literally booths that had like 5 foot walls around them. And we had five of them. And I remember being early days at Rosen Eye Care when a patient would walk in and the person would say, I'm here to pick up my eyewear. And they would say, take a seat in booth number 5 and someone will be right with you. And the person's looking kind of crooks their head like, what is booth 5? I mean, our booths weren't even numbered. And they just happened to know that was booth 5. What happened to be the first one closest to where the eyewear was being stored, the drawers we'd keep completed eyewear. And so the core mindset is like those people are displaying the have a seat in that booth, the one farthest to your left. We'll have an optician. He's busy finishing with another patient, but he should be there in less than 5 minutes. Make yourself comfortable. Would you like a cup of coffee? Not have a seat at booth 5 or fill the paperwork out.
Yeah,
That
and I
core
think
mindset.
that's exactly it. Patients can absolutely sense, and really, like anybody can sense whether the person who is in front of you is basically just doing their job and checking a box, right? Like the flat tone, okay, over there, right? Like booth 5, versus they're actually invested in your success as a patient or what the person you're working with. And the reality is, like, you can have the most refined, the most successful, I don't know, like we always talk about how a optical handoff makes so much money for the practice or loses so much money for the practice, but you can literally script down to the freaking word exactly what those people need to say. But if it is not delivered with empathy, with charisma, with care, genuine care, the experience is not human, and therefore the whole thing is lost. So this is the whole concept of core mindsets, is people who are truly invested in the success of your practice. And you can, we'll talk about how to find your own core mindsets in a second, but these are like people who are who really embody the rules of engagement that you want to build your practice on. And for the most part, I imagine anybody who's got an independent practice, I believe you probably buy into the fact that experience, your patient experience, is a differentiator for your practice. And so, in order for you to be able to differentiate between yourself and, I don't know, a corporate chain, for example, you need to make sure that your people are truly invested in the success of what it means to, deliver great care inside of your practice. And so, how do you find that? And again, I just want to say this one more time. The definition of a core mindset is the rules of engagement at your company, and everyone can have slightly different rules of engagement, but many of them are going to have similar patterns to being able to deliver amazing care and to truly actually care about the patients, right, Jamie?
100%. So, do you want to get into how to find your core mindsets?
Yeah, yeah, and once you find them, one of the things that you do is you use this for, basically hiring, firing, promotion, and difficult conversations. But one of the things that, this is one of those things where, like, you can't just have we'll call it like corporate speak on the wall that's
Yes,
like our
yes.
core mindset is great teamwork,
Yeah.
or integrity or something like that. Because, like, come on, like, what practices like our core mindset is not integrity, definitely not. Like, these are like basic rules of business. Great customer service, okay, like these are like totally expected and accepted rules of business. That you can't make those your core mindsets. Your
Yeah.
core
Core
mindsets,
mindsets is not excellence in patient care. That is not a core mindset. You got to break it down further.
yeah. So the way that you do this, right? If you had to think about how you find core mindsets. Step one is you got to look at all your people and you got to be like, who are the best people on my team and why? And what specifically? Maybe it's not even the entire person. Maybe like this one person is just like this one thing that they do is just freaking incredible. Well, let's talk about why that is. And we call this the sticky note exercise. I've done this in my business. We've done this in a lot of other practices. Have helped them through this. But the concept is you got to just jot down something that makes that you want to repeat, that you want to clone in your practice over and over and over again. You write down those behaviors on sticky notes. And then you just start sticking them on a board. And you could do this exercise yourself. You could do this with a small group of people in your organization. I wouldn't do it with everybody in your practice, but I would do it with
Maybe
people
your
who are in
leadership team.
management positions. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really, if you think about it, it's like, how is it that we're going to figure out what are the characteristics of the people we want to hire? And so you start thinking about your people and you start thinking about who does whatever exceptionally well that if you could, you'd love to clone them just for that one characteristic. Because there may be other aspects of that person's characteristics that you don't want to clone. And it's a good, I think it with your leadership team, I think it's a really good workshop to go through, to sit down and actually just write the name of that person, what that characteristic is, and you just don't even judge it. You just stick it up on the board, and you brainstorm. No bad ideas, just who is it that I'd love to clone for this characteristic?
Yep. And then you get like, let's just say you get like 20 sticky notes on the board. You're not going to have 20 core mindsets. You're going to have like 3 to 5 core mindsets because, again, these are rules that are rules of engagement. And then you kind of have to ask, what are the 3 to 5 most common behavioral themes among those particular team members? And how would you describe the underlying mindset within a few words? And then you're going to have to actually describe it in a lot of detail. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to basically take these sticky notes, you got to sort them. And I would recommend at this point, and I actually literally did this a couple weeks ago, is we took a picture of the board and we let AI sort it. And said, oh, hey, we're trying to sort this into 3 categories. And AI kind of struggled, but like it gave us an idea of how to take basically a messy board and to say, okay, let's put it into at least like 3 sides of the board. And then AI is smart enough to read your sticky notes as long as your handwriting is not awful. And then you started by sorting it, and then we sorted again, and then we applied some human intelligence, and then you would end up basically with, I'd call, 3 to 5 rules of engagement inside of your practice. And I mean, there are a few examples we could probably give, but I think I'll take one from the book where I think this one's in the book, where it's like you can say something like patient first decision making. Okay, so fine, that's a core mindset, patient first decision making. But how does someone know if they have that or not? And the way that you do that is you have to make sure that you have a description of it, right? So you have to say something like, we make decisions based on what's best for the patient, not what's fastest, not what's easiest, not what's most convenient for us, whether it's scheduling, clarifying policies, resolving concerns, or patient needs. Um, the all patient needs guide our actions, right? So, for example, you would then tell a couple stories. If patient first decision making, you would have to then be able to take the words. So you can kind of say, is this patient first decision making or is this not patient first decision making? Then you take the paragraph that your team can read and say, okay, that's a description of it. And then for the next like year, you have to identify different things that are happening in your practice and celebrate them as patient first decision making. And you need to say, hey, Susie was awesome at patient first decision making last Tuesday when she did that one thing, right? She could have saved herself a minute in, basically pointing the patient towards cubicle number 5 or whatever, or stall number 5, but she actually got up and walked the patient over and explained to them that that their glasses were ready and the optician was going to help them fit them, and really made the patient feel comfortable. And really, it was a patient first sort of scenario where that particular thing happened. You can describe the smallest thing that happens in your office that is a success, and describe it in the context of those particular core mindsets. Hopefully, that makes sense.
Yeah. And in the book, there's a ton of examples of exactly the detail. But you
Yeah.
guys, I think, get the idea that
Yeah,
you're
and I
looking
think
for.
that's the key part, is that in order to make these things real, you got to constantly educate people on them. You have to reinforce them. You have to recognize people when they do this well. And then, like you said earlier, you got to be able to hire, fire, and promote and have difficult conversations with people when they're not meeting those expectations. But that's what leads into getting the right people on the bus, because once you have your core mindsets developed, right? We say, you got to do that first, because then you know what the rules of engagement are in your practice. Once you know what the rules of engagement are in your practice, then you can identify who is following those rules of engagement. And in the book, we kind of give you like a 1 minute way of figuring out whether people are following it. You want to kind of cover that, Jamie?
Yeah. So that is referred to as the 1 minute team check. And basically, you know, we teach you to create um, a grid essentially that has on the um, uh, x-axis performance, and on the y-axis going up would be the core mindset. And you take your core mindsets and you plug each one of your team members in where they fit. What quadrant are they? What you'll find is that if you think of that quadrant, and it's easier to do if we had a graphic, but if they're high performers, but they in the organization. So think about it. The high performer in the organization may be very difficult, may be very selective in what patients they choose to help, but super high performer, but they're low on the core mindsets. You put a star in the lower right hand quadrant. You know, if they and what you're looking for are people that are high performers. So that would be high on the x axis to the right and high on the y axis of core mindsets. And you sort of map out your staff and where each person resides. Take it from there, Eugene.
Yeah. So then you got your all stars, which are the people that you would want to keep at all costs, right? Then the easy one is low core mindset, low performance, right? Those are, we call them the rats. You got to exterminate them out of your organization at all costs. Again, you'll spend whatever you need to spend to get those people out. They're bad at their job. They're bad at they don't have they're bad at following your rules. Get them out, right? And you'll pay whatever to get them out. The
So
tricky
that's
part,
low on core mindset, low on performance. That's the only quadrant that's the real easy one.
yeah,
Go to the next
yeah.
three.
So then I think the other two are equally hard, right? You got high core mindset. So these are great people. They're super, they're super great at following your rules. They're awesome, whatever, but they're just bad at their job. So high core mindset, low performance. We call those guys the puppies. And they're exactly like puppies in that context of the fact that they're really fun to be around. They're great. They're good people. They're whatever, but like sometimes they just make a mess, and like you can't really always count on them to do what you expect out of them.
And
And
and and these are the
that's
tough ones. These are super nice human beings. They happen to be very high on the core mindset, but their performance is terrible.
yeah.
So, and they're one of the most difficult because they're super nice people. They're just not going to help your business.
And that's the thing, is sometimes those are the people that got you to where you are today, but they're not the people who are going to take you to where you want to be later. And it's possible that the business has evolved past those people, and they know everything. They're nice to everybody. The patients might like them or whatever, but they keep making mistakes, or they don't know how to operate the new thing, or you switch DHRs and they've refused to they basically refuse to catch up, whatever that thing is, that's just not it's keeping them from being successful. The puppies, what we say is the puppies need a 90-day plan, and you got to stick to that plan. As hard as it seems, like you got to put that puppy up for adoption, if and let them pursue excellence elsewhere. It's good for your business, and it's also good for them, in order to in order to move forward. So you got to have a 90-day plan. The
And
other
if you're listening, I'm sure you already know who your puppy dogs are just from that description. But they need to be put on a 90-day plan.
Yeah, and the other category that's really hard is that people who are really great at their jobs, but they operate on their own rules, right? They are an exception to all of the core mindsets, right? If you got 3 to 5 core mindsets, maybe they're good at one or two of them, but they are generally just they because they're such high performers, they think they're untouchable. They're never going to get fired because maybe they're great with patients, and maybe they're jerks to everybody else, and you tolerate them because they have a good revenue per patient. But the thing is, the problem with those people is that even if they have great skills but really bad core mindsets, the problem is they're driving away your all stars. They are the people, they are the reason why the all stars leave, because the all stars are like, man, that is a difficult person to work with, or that person, I don't understand why we have rules, because that person certainly doesn't follow them. I don't want to work in a place where I'm the only one following the rules.
Yeah, those and I'm sure if you're thinking about it and you're listening, you know who your terrorists are. Those are the people. I mean, they could. So, the example that comes to mind: really unbelievable salesperson, never showed up to work on time. always felt that they could leave early if they had some excuse to leave early while everybody else is staying till the end of the day to do the closeouts. And that closeout process, like that was the rules in this area don't really apply to me. And they are usually high performers, right? That's what makes it hard.
Yeah. And so here's the deal. We actually, in the book, this is like your 1 minute check. In the book, we have a whole process by which you can figure out and essentially force rank performance across all of the different categories. And we talk about you not just your core mindsets, but also the quality of work that people are doing, the quantity of work people are doing, reliability, the desire to get the job done, and the grasp that they have on the job. And so we allow you to kind of take your whole team, put them in a spreadsheet, and we call this the boss team fit calculator. Okay? We pop them in a spreadsheet, and then from there, inside of that spreadsheet, what it allows you to do is to say, okay, what's the total score across all of those folks? And by the way, you can download the spreadsheet once you have the book. Um, what's the total score that each individual has, and then you kind of have to ask yourself, like, what is the minimum standard that I'm willing to accept in my practice? And then you usually use that spreadsheet to start putting people on performance plans and giving them a plan by which you can measure. But I think that's, Jamie, one of the big things is that you have to be able to measure. You can't just kind of come out of the blue and say, oh yeah, your quality is terrible. Well, like, define my quality or my quantity of work as terrible. If you're not measuring something, then you're not going to be able to have those conversations effectively.
So yeah, and think of this as a grid that has, let's say you have 5 core mindsets in the practice, and then you have the non-negotiables: quality, quantity, reliability, and desire. And you start ranking each person. You know, are they below the minimum standard, which is a 0? Are they at the minimum standard, which is a 1, or are they above the minimum standard, which is a 2? And then you would add up all the categories for per employee, and you get a score. This is what's great about this: is you get a number, and you get to decide what is the bare minimum number across all our key mindsets and the non-negotiables that you're going to accept continued employment, essentially. And what are the people that are sort of in the middle, and what are we talking to them about to improve so they get above that minimum core mindset threshold? And if they maintain the below the minimum standard, um, you are actively recruiting to replace them as they're on a course correction timeline, and ongoing feedback, because you want them to be successful. At the same time, once you start to manage them, and they tend to be below that minimum threshold, they start to look for another job. And so, what's great about this is you can do this every month or every quarter, and you know exactly who you're recruiting for before they hand you their resignation, or you have to encourage them to pursue excellence elsewhere.
Yeah, and I think your lesson to practice is, as I've heard it over and over again, is that you're always in recruiting mode. You're always looking for people, and even if you don't necessarily have a position open, you're always looking for people, because the reality is that if you can bring someone on, you don't want to recruit out of desperation. You want to recruit. You almost always want to have a bench.
Yeah. And as you grow and you have people that are managing different parts of your business, and many listening already do, but I will tell you, if you put them on sodium pentothal, they would tell you that they will run way faster to some person they interviewed that they're excited about. It enables them to continue to course correct the people that are below the minimum standard. And without that glimmer of hope, they are going to be really slow to move on people, because it's just giving everybody, including them, more work. And so it's really important to have this mindset that, we are always recruiting, because there's always going to be somebody that's falling below the line. So we're not waiting for the day they hand us the resignation to start the process of looking for someone. We're already ahead of that game. We're course correcting the below minimum threshold people, and we're getting excited about the aspect of hiring this new person that I just interviewed that seems great. Super important.
Yeah. So we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to see if we can cover one or two more concepts inside the people system, just to give our audience a little bit more detail. Hang in there, and we'll be right back in the Power Hour. Hey there, it's Eugene, and I want to let you in on something. So, you've been to conferences before, you come home fired up, and then Monday morning hits, and it's back to the grind. The ideas don't stick, the plan never gets made, and 6 months later, your practice is in the same place. So, I know that pain. I've been to those conferences with you, and that is not happening at this new event called Eyecare Boss Live. You've heard the story of Eyecare Boss, and now there's an event, Eyecare Boss Live. It's September 16th through 18th in Cleveland, 2.5 days. We're bringing together 200 of the best practice owners in eye care for a one of a kind event that combines speakers, peer learning, mastermind groups, and industry innovation, all designed around one goal. You leave with a 90-day plan and you can actually execute it and get stuff done. And we're going to tackle some real stuff: exam only rates, revenue per patient, people problems, leadership, AI and technology, specialty growth, the things that keep people up at night. We're going after it. And we're doing it in a room full of practice owners that are just as serious about growth as you are. This is not a conference. It's not a seminar. It's something different. There are only 200 spots. So if you want to be in on this, this is not publicly announced, just on this podcast. Go to thepowerpractice.com, click events, click apply now. This is invite only. It's not for everybody. So you have to apply. We'll ask you a few questions. And if it's a fit, we'll invite you to register. This event, Eyecare Boss Live, is going to sell out. Do not sit on it. I invite you to apply right now. And we're back on the Power Hour. This is Eugene Schatzman, and I'm here with my good friend and co-author of Eyecare Boss, Jamie Rosen. So we're talking about the people subsystem of the Eyecare business optimization scalability system. And as we're talking about it, I think what we've covered so far is the rules of engagement in your practice, which is which is core mindsets. We've also covered the ability to apply those rules of engagement to essentially force rank and measure whether the people on your team are actually meeting minimum performance standards, and really what's the minimum you're able to accept in your practice. Listen, these are foundational concepts, but the second that you apply the system, literally just follow the system step by step, then these start to fall into place. And the next concept is very similar to this as well. And this is called Zone of Genius. And I actually learned this from a guy named Dan Sullivan. He has a similar concept, and we've adapted it a little bit. But I think the concept is very much like most people, the work that they do every single day, if they just logged every little thing that they do every single day, about 20% of the work is work that they both truly enjoy and that they're really, really good at. And that's what we call the zone of genius. So for me, for example, recording this podcast is something I truly enjoy. But one example of something that I used to be good at and I used to do in my organization a long time ago, I thought that I was the right person to run payroll and approve payroll in my organization. And the reason I bring up that concept is I was like, okay, I had a lot of reasons why. Like I'd convinced myself that, I didn't want everyone to know what everyone else made. I wanted to catch mistakes. I didn't know what the patterns were that, if somebody was doing something that I didn't, I thought that, and this was probably, we're at 200 people now. It was probably like somewhere around the 30-40 person mark. I was still the person who had to get payroll in by 7 p.m., every other Tuesday or whatever it was. And so the employees could get paid on Friday. And so the reality is that that was something that I actually was good at it. I was competent at this particular thing. So I had high skill, but I freaking hated doing it, Jamie.
Yeah.
And so because I hated doing it, it was always number one is it was always left to the very end. Like if it was due at 7 p.m. at like 6:30, I'd be like, ah crap, I gotta do that thing. It's Tuesday. Darn it,
And I
like
gotta
this is
pay
the
my people, but I hate this thing.
right.
But,
I hate this stupid thing. So like then I'm spending a half hour doing it. It's never done to the level of diligence that I should probably do it, even though I think I'm still the best one to do it. It's also like every minute that I'm doing it, I'm like, this sucks. Why am I doing this? And if something more exciting comes across, like an email comes across the screen from a client, I definitely want to respond to that client. I enjoy communicating with my clients. I don't enjoy doing payroll. So like I'll immediately, I'll immediately sort of squirrel away from the task I hate to the task that I really like. Um, and the problem is that I mean, a couple times payroll was late, and it kind of cost me, a little bit of face with my employees. But also, it was just like it was one of those things. I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, I am capable of doing a good job, but I am not the best person in my organization to do this. I'm clearly in the wrong seat if I'm the master payroll writer or the master payroll approver in my organization. And eventually the person that I like kind of worked through all of my after I learned this concept, I kind of logged all my time, and I figured out what are all the things that I'm doing that are I'm really good at it, but I have very little passion to doing them. And that was kind of the aha moment. The aha moment for me was when I realized that there are probably other people in the world, maybe even in my organization, but other people in the world who would love to do that job for me and be extremely passionate about it. And
Yeah.
so, like,
So so think about this. You're juxtaposing capability versus enthusiasm, right? And so to the extent, this is kind of what we teach them about, to the extent, because it's never a perfect world, because everybody has chores they have to do. But to the extent that you can maximize the high capability with high enthusiasm and minimize the um, low enthusiasm and super, capable, you get your people in what Eugene's referring to as their zone of genius. Does that make
yeah.
sense?
And, look, if somebody is bad at something, so they're low competence or low capability and low enthusiasm about a task, that is clearly frustrating the crap out of that person to be doing that job. And so, like, they don't like it and they're bad at it. And you're still making them do it. What do you think they're doing in their off time? They're looking for another job.
Right.
And maybe it's a person that you absolutely freaking love, but they just hate doing payroll like me. And maybe they're also like not so good at it, and so like that person is super frustrated. And the reality is that there's probably someone out there. In my case, I worked through my whole thing of like, oh, like I don't want like somebody on my team knowing what everybody else makes, whatever. I kind of got over that obviously as my business matured, but at the time I thought that was a really big deal. So like I asked my bookkeeper, or I asked my accountant, I said, is there somebody that you know? And he's like, oh yeah, this awesome lady, $35 an hour, like she'll definitely do your payroll and audit and do this and do this and do this. And I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. So, I ended up contracting this lady for like 15 hours a week for a period of time while my business kind of worked its way up to that. But that lady was so passionate about it. She freaking loved it. She found all kinds of ideas and reports, and my employees were happier. And so that was like her zone of genius, is doing something that was not in my zone of genius. And so our point in introducing this concept is, if you have your people log the work that they do on a daily basis, and you just do this for like a week, especially if it's someone who says, I'm overwhelmed at my job, have them log specific tasks that they're doing in their day, and assign them the amount of time that they're doing to those tasks. We would call this kind of an activity audit, or mapping your time or whatever. And what we do is we say, okay, for every single one of those things, and we'll even give you a little worksheet to go with this, is for every single one of those activities that this person is doing, how much of that is in their zone of genius? How much of that is just something that they're capable at, but they freaking hate it? And how much of that is in the zone of frustration? Or some of it could be in that other category of, they're really passionate about it. They just need some coaching so they can learn about it. So it could get into their zone of genius if you just invested a little bit of time. And they could tell you, I'm really freaking passionate about explaining dry eye. I really like talking about it. I'm just not that good at it yet. Like, my patients say no to me, but I really want to get good at it. And if that's something they really want to get good at, well, give them the extra time, give them the training, pair them with somebody in a different practice, or give them a coach, or or have them watch someone who's really good. But that person could go from low capability which is that zone of learning and high enthusiasm, to a zone of genius. And the idea is the more stuff you put on your team's plate that is inside of their zone of genius, that's when their work doesn't feel like work. That's when they love their job, they perform at their best, and they're excited about coming to work every single day, and they'll recruit other employees to you, and they'll tell everybody how great you are, and your patients are going to feel it as well, because that person is excited to be doing the job that they're sitting there doing.
And you probably have people, what we found, Eugene and I, when we went through this concept, is that you're going to have people that are low capable, low enthusiasm, that are doing some function that there's someone else that is super low capability and low enthusiasm in what they're spending their time on. And it's almost like you create the swap of a
Mhm.
task from somebody that hates it, may be good at it, hates it, is bad at it, to somebody that loves it and is super capable at. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of a win for the practice.
And for the listeners, I want to challenge you to do this, because this was really transformational for me in my business career. Is when I mapped my time, and I found that I was spending about 10% of my time in my zone of genius. And then I started looking at everything else that I was doing, and I was like, man, I would really do a lot better, and I would be a lot happier with the work that I'm doing, and I would be better for the clients. I would be better for everybody if I could just spend more than 10% of my time doing what I love. And then I started figuring out, how do I delegate? And what I realized was there were other people in my organization that were doing things that they thought were helpful to me that I actually really love doing. So I was like, okay, I'll take that from them, but they'll take this from me. So, but the thing is, if you map your own time, you'll probably find that about maybe 20, like I guess most people, when they first start this exercise, they find that about 20% of the work they do is in their zone of genius. I don't care if your zone of genius is seeing patients, fantastic. If your zone of genius is, looking at practice reports, fantastic. If your zone of genius is something else, coaching people, fantastic. Whatever it is, it's different for everybody, but you got to spend more than 20% of your time in it. But how do you know? Until you start logging it, you really don't. And so again, we encourage you to go grab the book, read through it, and talk about and look at the tools that ultimately help you get there. So the other concept, and I think this kind of nicely leads into the concept of building a leadership team. And Jamie, I mean, you have built a leadership team before, and you've watched people kind of start stop a lot of leadership teams. And I think the biggest mistake that people make is what, when building leaders.
Well, they fall in love with people that are not capable, but uh, and I would also say that part of the bulletproofing of making that mistake is really the team fit calculator that we talked about, and then this whole concept of highly capable, your zone of genius, highly capable, and love it, enthusiastic. And I think a lot of times, um, I do think that understanding who your puppies and terrorists and people that just need it are the rats basically is super important as well. I think that, when you start moving into measuring ways of measuring people's performance, I think it is enlightening, and eliminates the disillusion or the saving souls, if you will, of saving souls. So that would be a pretty regular mistake that I see.
Yeah, I
Um,
totally agree. I think the other mistake that I've seen practices make is that they say, "Hey, you're really good at one particular thing, and now you're going to be the manager." And
well,
because you
that's
were
the
just
Peter
good at that.
principle. Yeah, people ascend to their level of incompetence essentially, as opposed to merit based.
Yeah.
I think that's very important as well.
So, but that it's like a double whammy, because when you say you are the best optician, like you were so good, you were the best with patients, you made the most amount of revenue per patient, you just like patients loved working with you. And so because you're so good, I'm going to make you the optical manager because you deserve the promotion, right? Like that's what people do all the time. But now you've double whammied yourself, because you're like, I now just took a great person off the floor, and I they probably, in some cases, they don't have any business managing anyone. And so because they have no business managing anyone, now all of my people who are working for them are miserable, and this person's kind of miserable because they feel like they have to take the promotion because, why would they say no? It's more money. And now, everybody is in a mode to fail. So I think that's another one where it's like, man, if you and
Super
I've seen
common.
that mistake made. I've made that mistake
Me
myself.
too. Me too. My best
And
salesperson now is the manager of everybody. Terrible manager. Does not have those capabilities. Was really a great salesperson. And they really should be a great salesperson, not the manager of people because they just have the capabilities. And this is what's great about the team fit calculator and the zone of genius. I mean, you start to get feedback from your people in the zone of genius where they see themselves, what they love doing, what they hate doing, and then then you bounce that against the team fit calculator, which is you may love doing this, but actually I put you in the low performance category and low core mindset category. So you start to use these things as tools that interact with each other to give you a clearer picture of your people and where they should be ascending to and where they should not be ascending to. And then that whole idea of we are constantly recruiting for those people that are below the minimum threshold. These different pieces work together to give you a better picture of who you should be course correcting and working with to get better on a timeline, and who isn't worth that trip, um, and who should be switched from doing something they really hate but they're good at to something they really love and they're good at.
yeah, and
It's
I
really
think,
important.
and in the book, we kind of give you a three-step process to kind of root out early leaders, meaning the people who have a lot of leadership potential in your organization, but do it in a kind of a lower risk way. And so one of those things is, you build the structure as Jamie's talking about, and you start using the tools and you're like, this person's good at this. This person could be better at that. And as you start going through that, you realize that these are people, like, for example, if somebody understands the core mindsets and just like fully embodies them and is coaching other people, just not because they're just excited to show a new hire how to get something done. Okay, great. There's somebody who regularly gives shout outs. Okay, great. Somebody who knows their numbers. Okay, that's somebody who has leadership potential. Somebody who gives credit to other people on a regular basis. So we give you this whole list in the book of, kind of leadership indicators that are early. And then instead of promoting that person, what we suggest you do is we say you got to create kind of a middle ground, right? We kind of call them like low risk and high learning leadership opportunities. Like you could give somebody a responsibility, like a goal for a particular quarter, that or maybe for multiple quarters, to say, like, for example, we're bringing in dry eye and you're in charge of figuring out our patient experience protocols for dry eye, or you're in charge of solving why this particular, you get to own exam onlys for a quarter, right? Like you are the exam only police for a quarter. And then see how they do, right? Instead of promoting them and saying, and a lot of people would ask us, and I guess I'll ask you, Jamie, is when you give some of these additional responsibilities. So, like, for example, giving them a chance to lead a portion of a meeting on a regular basis, or maybe be part of new hire training in some capacity. Do you immediately compensate them additionally for the additional responsibility, or what do you do?
Well, so it's a mix, it depends, but I would say it's a combination of either the role is big enough where based on their compensation level, they need to be compensated for, but it might be a special project. I like using special projects for people if it's a new area that they are interested in being in. So I think that sometimes works with a bonus variable comp if they accomplish the goal, which then leads to a more permanent position within the organization with that type of role. I think this sort of leads nicely into change management in a way,
Yeah,
because
perfect. We got like two
that's
minutes to cover one of the
yeah.
last sections,
So
so let's
so
do
what
that.
what we would do is what we subscribe practice is doing is they have a carved out time where the leadership of the practices works on the business, not in the business. They actually make an hour every month, every quarter to talk about ways in which we could help grow the practice, enhance the experience for the patients, and enhance the experience for the employees. And there always needs to be a metric driven approach. So, for example, you may say, well, we could increase prices by $5. That's something we might be able to do. And then you look at what would that impact the business? What kind of impact does a $5 increase mean? What kind of impact would getting just 5% better at exam onlys, or 5% better at annual supplies, or 5% better at multiple pairs? And so through this group, you are listing these ideas to grow the business, and then you're calculating what's in it for the business. Is it worth, let's say you had an initiative that was going to generate $500 of savings or $500 of incremental sales in a period of time, call it a quarter. And then you trip over other ideas that when you said, if we just got a little bit better, 'cause use the 5% rule, got a little bit better, 5% better, this would generate 30 or 40 or 50 or $60,000 for the practice. Clearly, you're going to choose the biggest opportunity from a revenue perspective or a cost saving perspective. And then once you do that, we teach you, and we don't have time to go through it all, but we teach you basically how to plan for the rollout of this new initiative, not just decide to roll it out tomorrow, but actually plan, intentionally plan, making sure you have identified a point person, which could be that person that you think has high capability and high enthusiasm for this particular change. And they became the point person. And their job is to report back every single day on how we move the needle before you've rolled it out. Then we go through, what is the rollout strategy? Why is the practice turning directions? In other words, this is not the flavor of the month. Because if you're in a practice where you come back with a lot of great ideas after a conference, your people know, if I keep my head down low, this too will pass, and we can get back to the routine stuff that we were doing before. This is you actively identifying, you know, how are we going to roll this out? Why are we doing this? What's the benefit? What's in it for my staff if we hit the goal, that $60,000 goal? What's in it for them? So you align incentives, and then you start looking and thinking about what are the behaviors that lead to the goal. So that's a very short version, Eugene, but essentially this is a tool that you use every time you want to change a direction in the organization and add an additional incentive, an additional initiative to help build and grow the practice. And we go through that in a lot of detail. We spent a whole hour on that.
Yeah, yeah. No, this is such a freaking powerful concept. I think a lot of people what this allows you to do, and we'll cover this in future shows, is it allows you to get the whole team unified behind an initiative for growth instead of having a shower thought every single month or every single week. And to say, here's another thing we should do, here's another thing we should do, here's another thing. What this allows you to do is focus, because you know that, as you say, Jamie, it's worth the trip to focus on that particular initiative and then to go through the process of actually executing the initiative to its fullest potential rather than just saying, oh, we should, and then leave it there. So, um, I think we have to call it a day for this one of the monthly series. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We are very much looking forward to your feedback. If you're listening, Jamie and I want to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts.
100%.
We want to hear what else you want from us as we kind of continue this series, because over the course of the next 5 months, you're going to hear from us once a month. And we want to make sure these episodes are as useful to you as possible. And if you already got the book, you could probably kind of listen along and double check your, after you, some people learn by reading, some people learn by listening, some people learn with both. But we're excited to share these concepts with you, and honestly, part of it is just, it's a roadmap that is a bunch of shortcuts that that hopefully help prevent a lot of mistakes that we made, and also a lot of mistakes that we witnessed other people making on the road to on their journey to success, so that you can get to where you want to be faster. Thank
Yeah.
you all for listening.
Thank you.
Jamie, any final words?
No, I just say that, you should probably at least give it a quick read, because I think what you'll find is, A, these are thought compelling. The tools are there to give you a starting point. Don't feel free to tweak the tools, But I would just say this is not like theoretical stuff. The reason we did this is because we wanted super applicable, actionable things you could do and take back to your practice, without having to go through, as Eugene said, the bumps and bruises that we went through as we were trying to approximate success in our businesses.
And the key part is that the book is accompanied by a whole bunch of tools and toolkit that is complete. So every single thing we talk about, there is a tool you can download, you can use at your next meeting and just implement, implement, implement. That would be the Jamie and I are both not fans of informational entertainment or infotainment. We are big fans of taking action, and we hope that you have enough from this show to do so. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks everybody for listening today, and we'll be back at you in a month.
So, yeah.